Poop Pills of Power. Absurd Medicine for Sleep. Part 1. A gentle welcome to the world of digestive wisdom. It always begins with a whisper, not of wind, not of love, but of digestion. Welcome, dear sleeper, to another story that absolutely should not be told before bed. And yet, here we are, because nothing says sweet dreams like ancient humans earnestly consuming poop. Yes, you read that correctly. Tonight's tale is about coprophagia therapy, a practice so real, so ancient, and so utterly grotesque you may just fall asleep from shock. But don't worry, I won't startle you with violence or horror. There will be no jump scares here, only soft, soothing facts about the medicinal use of feces, like a warm compress for the soul. A soul that might be asking, why? And also, how dare they? But let us not judge too quickly. For once upon a time, somewhere between sand and scrolls, physicians believed the secrets to healing lay not in heaven, but in the latrine. So tuck yourself in, dim the lights, let go of judgment and common sense, and prepare for a historical enema of the mind. We begin in ancient Egypt, the year, let's say, 1550 BCE. The place? A bustling city along the Nile where gods walked among men, and men walked very carefully around piles of sacred dung. In this time, the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts known to humanity, described over 700 magical and medical remedies. Among them, feces. Yes, the Egyptians believed that poop, when properly aged, mashed, or burned, had the power to heal everything from fevers to infected wounds. Donkey dung, goose droppings, even human feces, though usually someone else's, for decency's sake. But this wasn't some barbaric prank. These were educated men, trained in temples, reading sacred texts. And those texts told them, when in doubt, apply the scat. Let's imagine a patient. We'll call him Kem. Kem has a swollen knee. He hobbles into the house of healing, where he's greeted by a calm priest in leopard skin and eyeliner. What ails you, noble one? My knee, great healer. Fear not. We shall smear it with crocodile dung and recite the hymn of relief. And so it is done, because back then, healing wasn't about sterility or science. It was about balance. You see, the ancient Egyptians believed the body was filled with channels, like the Nile, and when these became blocked, illness flowed in. To unblock the flow, they used anything that came out naturally, including what came out the back. Still awake? Good. Let's travel forward in time and eastward to the world of early Islamic medicine. A golden age of knowledge, poetry, and poop pills. Yes, it's not just an Egyptian thing. In medieval Baghdad, renowned physicians like Al-Razi and Ibn Sina compiled encyclopedias of treatments. Most were brilliant, some were brown. Dry feces, powdered and pressed, were used in small doses to rebalance humors. They were seen as detoxifying, especially if sourced from a healthy donor, which naturally begs the question, how did one become a certified poop donor in the 9th century? Did they post flyers? Hold auditions? No one knows. But somewhere in the back rooms of libraries and clinics, someone was carefully measuring and preparing capsules of excremental essence. And if you think that's the end of it, oh no. This was only the appetizer. In the chapters to come, we'll explore how dried stool was used to treat seizures, how camel dung was prescribed to fix melancholy, and how doctors believed that ingesting someone else's waste could cure your spiritual imbalance. But for now, let your thoughts soften. Let your inner humor settle. And know this, if someone once told you to eat crap, They might have meant it medicinally. Sweet dreams. We're just getting started. Let us drift now, just a little deeper, beyond the Nile, past the minarets of Baghdad, to a quieter, darker room where someone is grinding something unpleasant with a mortar and pestle. The smell? Distinct. The intent? Pure. You see, in many cultures, poop was not just a waste product. It was potential, a medicine waiting to be activated by heat, prayer, and the crushing pressure of complete desperation. Let's pause and ask the question that every normal person would. Why? Why on earth would any society, at any time, consider poop to be healing? The answer is balance. Throughout much of ancient and medieval medicine, illness was thought to come from imbalance in the humors. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each humor had its opposite. Too hot? Apply something cold. Too dry? Use something moist. Too clean? Well, perhaps something dirty. And nothing was more symbolically potent than dung. It was warm, moist, earthy, and it had been inside someone else, which made it somehow more qualified than regular mud. But the use of feces wasn't limited to medicine. In some traditions, it took on spiritual dimensions. Take India, for example. In ancient Ayurvedic practices, cow dung was seen not just as medicine, but as sacred, holy even, could purify not just the body, but the soul. You could clean your house with it, disinfect your wounds, and yes, if you were particularly adventurous, ingest it as a way to cure ailments of the stomach and spirit. Cow dung was warm and sattvic, meaning it brought calmness and clarity. So while the Western world saw excrement as disgusting, many Eastern traditions saw it as transformative. Imagine a young monk in training. He falls ill with a stomach ailment. His teacher does not give him herbs or tea. Instead, he is told to take a small, sun-dried pellet of cow dung, aged 3 days ideally, and mix it with milk. Drink, the elder says, for within filth lies the truth. And he does. And maybe, just maybe, he gets better. Or maybe he just stops complaining. Meanwhile, in the West, doctors were starting to get fancy. Apothecaries began producing compressed dung tablets, little brown miracles wrapped in wax paper. They were sold discreetly, of course. You wouldn't find them on the top shelf. But ask the right person and they'd whisper, "Ah yes, the earthy blend, imported, camel-based, very effective." Some were made with infant feces, believed to be especially pure. Others came from noble horses. And in some cases, mummified feces from ancient tombs were ground and used in potions. Because if you're already using powdered mummy meat, and yes, that's real, why not add their last meal too? But make no mistake, this was not comedy. This was serious business. Scholars debated the potency of poop pills in letters. Monks recorded recipes in their manuscripts. There were debates over shelf life, optimal dryness, and, of course, which animal yielded the most curative stools. Spoiler, it was almost always the camel. But not all dung was created equal. The best dung came from healthy, grass-fed animals, ideally collected at dawn, fresh but not steaming, dry but not dusty. In fact, one medieval Persian physician even wrote, "Dung, when harvested with devotion and stored with modesty, becomes the gold of the ill." Let's take a moment to appreciate that sentence. Dung, gold, illness, modesty. History is disgusting and beautiful. So the next time your stomach hurts and someone offers you a bland cracker and a sip of tea, be grateful. For there was a time, not so long ago, when you would have been handed something much darker and told to chew. But don't worry, We're only beginning to scratch the surface. In the next chapter, we explore how poop became a battlefield cure, a spiritual trial, and even a secret ingredient in royal medicine. For now, breathe in, hold it, breathe out slowly, and give thanks that you live in the age of ibuprofen. Sleep, brave listener, but not too deeply. There's more to come. Let's drift now to the battlefield. The year is unimportant. Pick any one. 1500, 1100, 200. The story's the same. Men shouting, swords clashing, mud, blood, and yes, poop. Always poop. For where there are armies, there are latrines. And where there are latrines, there are healers looking strangely optimistic. Picture a young soldier. Let's call him Edric. He's just been stabbed in the thigh. Not fatally, but deeply. He limps back to camp, clutching his leg. The medic looks at the wound and nods gravely. This, he says, calls for the sacred poultice. He reaches for a linen bundle, unwraps it. Inside, a warm mixture of moss, honey, and, well, what we now politely call biological material. Edric stares. Is that? Yes, the medic says. It is. But why? Hush now. It draws out the rot. And so it is done. Because in many medieval medical traditions, feces were believed to absorb infection, draw out bad humors, and stimulate healing. Which makes a strange kind of sense if you squint at it in a tent with no microscopes. These battlefield medics weren't fools. They were improvisers. They had no antibiotics, no antiseptics, but they had access to human and animal dung, sometimes aged, sometimes fresh, and they believed truly that it could save a limb, or at least keep it attached long enough to reach home. In 12th century Europe, poultices made of horse dung and butter were applied to wounds. Butter soothed. Dung did something? No one questioned it. It was warm. That was enough. Meanwhile, in ancient China, some war doctors created concoctions called yellow soup, a fermented liquid derived from human feces, to treat food poisoning and severe diarrhea among soldiers. Yes, yellow soup. And in some reports, this foul fluid actually worked, long before anyone knew what bacteria were. Why? Because of gut flora. Yes, actual science snuck in through the back door. Literally. Modern medicine now uses fecal microbiota transplants to treat serious infections like C. diff. It's sterile, controlled, processed, but deep down it's the same ancient idea. Good poop in, bad poop out. Let's take a breath here. Because this is the moment when history meets medicine meets sheer human stubbornness. The moment when someone said, yes, I will smear this goat dung on my arrow wound and I will live. And sometimes, incredibly, they did. Of course, not every dung cure was noble. Some were downright punitive. In 17th century England, if a poor person couldn't afford a doctor, they might be told to bury their stool under a full moon, dig it up 3 days later, and place it under their tongue to cure a toothache. Why? No reason. It just sounded hard enough to work. But there was something deeper going on, a belief that suffering itself had value. That to heal, one must endure. Not just the illness, but the cure. So in a way, poop therapy wasn't just medicine. It was a test, a proving ground. Are you worthy of health? Are you strong enough to eat this pill, knowing what it is? Will you face your fear and your gag reflex like a warrior? Edric did. So did monks, farmers, queens, and scholars. Not because it made sense, but because it was what was done. And maybe, just maybe, because somewhere, deep inside, people believed that if something so disgusting could be part of the cure, then maybe, just maybe, anything was possible. Even getting better. Let us leave the battlefield now. Let the wounds fester in peace. Let Edric rest or itch, depending on how well that poultice worked. And let us enter the lab. Not a modern lab with beakers and gloves. No, this is a stone chamber, lit by candlelight and superstition. The walls are lined with scrolls, the shelves with jars of ash, blood, and something dark and crumbly. Welcome to the alchemist's workshop, where transformation is everything, and filth, dear sleeper, is merely potential in disguise. In the medieval mindset, alchemy wasn't just about turning lead into gold. It was about refining the base into the pure, the impure body into a holy vessel, the earthly into the divine. And what could be more base than excrement? To an alchemist, poop was raw material. It had been inside the body. It had absorbed life, waste, energy, and spirit. Now, expelled, it was ready to be reborn. So they dried it, crushed it, heated it until it smoked. Sometimes they burned it entirely, collecting the ash and mixing it with wine or oil. This, they claimed, removed the corruptive properties while retaining the essence. Because what is dung but earth touched by life? One famous French alchemist, name lost to time, wrote, "The humors, when expelled, carry the shadow of the soul. Refined, they may speak back to the flesh." What does that mean? No one knows. But it was written in beautiful calligraphy, so it must be important. Let's imagine him. A man with wild hair and elegant ink-stained fingers. He is stirring something thick in a brass cauldron. He whispers to it. He blesses it. Then he sets it aside to dry into tablets of transformation. Not pills, talismans, healers of both body and fate. Some believed these concoctions could cure melancholy. Others said they banished spirits. Still others claimed that a properly alchemized fecal pill could alter your destiny, redirecting misfortune through your bowels and out into the stars. It sounds ridiculous. It was ridiculous, but it was also sincere. These were people trying to make sense of a world filled with pain and rot, trying to believe that nothing, not even waste, was truly useless, that even the most humble substance could become divine. You see, poop was symbolic. It represented the cycle. What comes in must come out. What is cast away may yet return. Even Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, and that donkey certainly had a digestive system. Coincidence? Sure. But history is full of metaphors, some more fragrant than others. Let's return briefly to the East. In ancient Tibetan medicine, practitioners believed that purging was essential to spiritual balance. They used fecal analysis not just for illness but for prophecy. The consistency of a person's stool could reveal their karmic imbalance. And yes, in rare cases, consuming specially prepared animal dung was prescribed to realign their path. Imagine going to a monk and saying, "I feel lost," and the monk nods, stirs a clay bowl, and says, "Drink this. The yak passed it at dawn. You are lucky." And maybe you were. Back in Europe, some healers took a more artistic approach. They infused dried feces with herbs and incense. Turning them into burning pellets meant to smoke out disease from the lungs. Sort of like a reverse incense stick with lower expectations. These were not doctors in the modern sense. They were part magician, part apothecary, part priest. And to them, the line between waste and wisdom was thin. If fire could purify, prayer could heal, then surely the things we flush away could also, maybe, save us. So next time you see a pile of filth and think, "Ugh, disgusting," take a moment, breathe in gently, and consider, maybe that's not waste. Maybe it's a misunderstood miracle. Now rest. Let your thoughts simmer. Let your body soften like well-aged compost. Because in the next chapter, we will explore the strange intersection of royalty, ritual, and a very peculiar stool sample that once changed history. Sleep tight, Don't sniff too hard. The Poop Pills of Power. Absurd Medicine for Sleep. Part 5, Thrones, Crowns, and the Royal Stool. Now open your eyes gently. Not all the way. Just enough to see velvet. We are no longer in a battlefield tent or a smoky alchemist's lab. We are standing before a throne. Not a metaphorical one. A very literal, porcelain-adjacent throne. Tonight, dear listener, we step into the world of royal poop. Because if there is one truth about kings and queens throughout history, it is this. They too had bowels. Shocking, I know. But even the most divine monarchs were, at their core, deeply mortal. And nowhere was this more evident than in their privy rituals. In medieval France and England, kings had a personal attendant known as the groom of the stool. A real title. A real job. A real person whose entire profession was, well, assisting with royal digestion. His duties included preparing the royal chamber pot, managing the linen, and most importantly, keeping a written record of the king's bowel movements. Yes, a daily log of the royal log. But this wasn't just bathroom gossip. No, the state depended on it. A healthy stool meant a healthy king. And a healthy king meant stability, order, and an uninterrupted tax structure. If the royal poop was too soft, too dark, too infrequent, alarms were metaphorically raised. Doctors were summoned. Treatises were written. Lavender-scented compresses were applied. And if the king's feces were found to be lacking in majesty, well, there were treatments. Enter the royal dung pill. Crafted by court physicians using the finest ingredients, herbs, wine, powdered pearls, and occasionally, yes, carefully selected animal droppings known for their humoral balancing properties. Camel, again, was popular, as was deer, but the true luxury brand of excrement came from the Iberian ibex, whose dried pellets were believed to contain the vigor of the mountain and the calm of the clouds. Imagine a court physician in robes, gold chain glinting in the firelight, handing a velvet pouch to the king. Inside, 5 perfect spheres of fragrant, spice-infused dung. Your Majesty, he says, bowing for intestinal harmony and divine focus. And the king, because it was tradition, and possibly because he had no choice, choose. Slowly, with dignity. But this wasn't just about medicine. It was ritual. To consume something humble, even foul, was seen as an act of humility before the gods. A reminder that even the mighty must bow to nature, and sometimes swallow it. In Renaissance Italy, popes were given stool analysis as part of their spiritual and physical assessments. They even had golden commodes because holiness apparently must shine from every angle. And the samples? Carefully collected, sealed in beeswax, and analyzed by monks trained in scatological diagnosis. A pope with well-formed leavings was considered spiritually aligned. A pope with irregularities? A sign from above or below. Meanwhile, in the Ottoman Empire, sultans had teams of physicians who evaluated not only their diet and dreams, but their bowel consistency. One chronicler describes the royal physician inspecting the sultan's stool with a silver rod, noting the aroma, texture, and emotional aura. What is an emotional aura of poop, you ask? We may never know, but they took it very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that when Sultan Bayezid II fell ill in 1501, the Grand Vizier suspended court sessions, not because of a battle, not due to famine, but because the royal stool had ceased to express harmony. Yes, that is a real quote, translated from Ottoman court records. You see, when the body of the ruler falters, the kingdom trembles. And so every drop, every crumb, every softly pressed fecal pearl was weighed, examined, and occasionally prescribed as medicine in reverse. Because who better to heal the king than the king? In rare cases, a ruler's own stool was dried, powdered, and re-administered to them as part of a closed-loop therapy. A full circle of sovereignty. A digestive Ouroboros. It sounds ridiculous. And it was. But it was also sacred. To touch the king's excrement was to touch a fragment of the divine. And to treat it, to ingest it, was to participate in a royal mystery that bordered on magic. So the next time you sit quietly on your own humble porcelain throne, remember, somewhere long ago a king was doing the same, but with incense and an audience. Sleep now, little monarch. Your digestive cord is dismissed. Let us now leave the palace. Let the king nap in his golden bathroom. Let the popes meditate beside their beeswax-sealed vials. We step forward, centuries forward, into a world of white walls, fluorescent lights, and quiet humming machines. Welcome to the hospital, but not just any hospital. A gastroenterology clinic where, once again, poop is king. Only now it wears a lab coat, because what the ancients did by instinct, modern medicine has begun to do with microscopes, double-blind studies, and sterile containers. And somewhere in the heart of this quiet revolution lies the miracle of the fecal microbiota transplant. Yes, a poop transplant. Let's say you're sick, very sick. You have a condition called Clostridioides difficile infection, or C. diff, a nasty, recurring, gut-destroying problem that laughs in the face of antibiotics. Nothing works. You're exhausted, desperate. And then a doctor says, "We're going to take someone else's poop and put it inside you." You blink. You think, this must be a prank. It is not. They extract the healthy microbiota, the complex community of gut bacteria, from a donor's stool. Then, through various methods, and trust me, we'll skip the details, they deliver it to your system. And the results? Often miraculous. Patients who were bedridden are back on their feet. Fevers drop. Digestion restores. Lives are saved by poop. But not just any poop. It must be screened, filtered, purified. The donor must be healthy, tested, and ideally charismatic, though that's not medically required. Some clinics now keep stool banks. Yes, like blood banks, but browner. They catalog samples, freeze them, and use them when needed. Some are even encapsulated poop pills in clear, sterile capsules, odorless, tasteless, and surprisingly effective. Swallowing one is a strange act of faith, a trust in science, a strange echo of what our ancestors did, but with slightly more paperwork. Let's appreciate that full circle. Ancient Egyptians mashed goose droppings into wounds. Arab scholars dried camel dung into powder. Monks burned animal pellets to purify rooms. And now, Harvard-trained doctors insert purified poop into your colon and write about it in The Lancet. The substance has not changed, only the ritual. And here's the twist. Modern science is discovering that the gut microbiome affects far more than digestion. Mood, immunity, even behavior. Mice with altered gut flora become anxious. Humans with diverse microbiomes are more resilient. There's even research suggesting gut bacteria can affect how we think and feel. Which begs the question, were the ancients somehow right? Not about the magic, not about spiritual auras or yak-based karmic energy, but about this, that what leaves the body is not just waste, but a reflection of health. That restoring balance may require something humble, even repulsive. That healing might come from the most unexpected sources. Perhaps that's why this field is growing so quickly, because it challenges our pride. It forces us to ask, what if the cure is not something shiny and new, but something we've flushed away for centuries? Let's not get too philosophical, but imagine, just for a moment, telling a medieval healer that his poop pill idea wasn't completely insane. Imagine the joy, the validation, the smug little smile on his turmeric-stained lips. You might say, "Sir, your methods were unhygienic, dangerous, and based on complete guesswork. But somehow, you were onto something." He'd nod, then probably try to sell you some. So tonight, as you drift off, know this. You live in the age of poop capsules, gut biomes, and microbiota glory. You are surrounded by bacteria inside and out, and some of them might just save you. So don't be afraid of filth, of failure, of things that seem beneath you, because sometimes the thing beneath you is exactly what you need. Sleep now, and let your gut flora flourish. Welcome, dear sleeper, to a most exclusive gallery. You've walked the palaces, wandered the battlefields, sat beside the monk, and swallowed the sterile capsule. But now we open the vault, the Hall of Fame of Fecal Remedies, or perhaps the Hall of Shame. You may clutch your pillow tightly now, because things are about to get very brown. Let's begin with an old favorite from ancient Egypt. 1. The donkey dung bandage. Used for infected wounds and abscesses, this delightful remedy involved taking fresh donkey droppings, mixing them with honey and resin, and applying the result directly to the skin. The logic: honey was antimicrobial, resin was sticky, and donkey poop was traditional. Did it work? Sometimes. Did it smell? Always. Next, a medieval gem from Europe. 2. Infant feces and butter poultice. Yes, you read that correctly. For skin rashes and swelling, physicians recommended smearing a mix of baby poop and melted butter onto the affected area. But why babies, you ask? Because their feces were considered pure, and the butter, probably to help it glide. A win for friction, a loss for dignity. Now to ancient China. 3. Yellow soup. This one we've mentioned. A fermented broth made from human feces and water, left to stew for several days. Served ideally at body temperature. Prescribed for severe diarrhea, poisoning, and general misfortune. Its effects were sometimes real, its flavor unspeakable. From the Roman Empire we have, for goose dung eye treatment. Yes, the eyes. Mixed with vinegar, this greenish paste was applied around the eyes to treat styes, swelling, and even spiritual afflictions. Because nothing says vision restored like foul feces applied directly to your face. Moving right along. 5. The ash of burnt excrement. Burn it all down. In medieval Islamic medicine, some physicians preferred to burn feces completely and use the ash. Why? Because the ash, they believed, was purified, stripped of its filth, and rich in earth energy. Mixed with rose oil, it was applied to the temples for migraines. From the depths of Ayurvedic tradition. 6. Cow dung milkshake. A concoction of dried cow dung, blended with warm milk, and consumed during fasting rituals. Said to realign one's karmic energies, cleanse the gut, and improve concentration. At the very least, it would make you very focused on your next toilet trip. And now, the piece de resistance. 7. The royal fecal pearl. From 17th century Spain. Crafted by palace apothecaries. This was a hardened, polished sphere of dried stool, coated in crushed pearls and gold leaf. Yes, a literal golden poop pill. It was believed to stimulate courage, fertility, and intestinal majesty. No record survives of its effects, but one noblewoman reportedly wore it as a necklace. Now pause. Let the nausea pass. Let your imagination settle. Because here's the thing. All of these, every brown smear of history was created with hope. Hope that something discarded could be transformed. Hope that suffering could end. Hope that the cure was already within reach, or at least within reach of a shovel. In a way, these remedies are more than disgusting. They are human. They represent the absurd beauty of people who refused to give up. Who said, "This smells awful, but maybe, just maybe, it's medicine." They are monuments to creativity, to desperation, to the eternal belief that healing is possible, even if it's gross. So as you lie there now, cozy and safe, know that you live in a time when we've turned all of this into science. We no longer drink yellow soup. We no longer butter ourselves in baby poop, and we certainly no longer accessorize with fecal jewelry. Probably. But let us remember, with quiet awe, that history is weird, medicine is weirder, and humanity is a masterpiece of bad decisions and good intentions. Sleep well. You've earned it. And now, dear listener, we are full of knowledge, full of disbelief, full of images we cannot unsee, but perhaps also full of perspective. Tonight, we traveled through deserts and palaces, temples and trenches, latrines and laboratories. We met donkey dung, camel pellets, baby butter paste, and royal golden poop pearls. We held them up to the light carefully and asked, "Why?" And again, the answer whispered back, "Because we hoped. Because humanity has always been searching for healing, for comfort, for a way to make sense of pain. And sometimes that search leads us to strange places, to ash, to bile, to things we pretend we're too civilized to touch. But beneath the absurdity, beneath the gag reflex, lies something noble. Humility. Because to believe that poop might heal you, that's not pride. That's surrender. It's admitting, I don't have all the answers. I'll try anything. I'll believe in something so ugly because I want to live. It is the medicine of last resort, but also perhaps the medicine of first wisdom. Because healing was never meant to be glamorous. It was meant to work. And sometimes what works doesn't smell like roses. Let's return just for a moment to that monk in the mountains. The one who stirred yak dung into milk with steady hands and calm breath. Not because he enjoyed it, but because he believed in process, in ritual, in something bigger than taste. Let's remember Edric on the battlefield, wincing as his wound was packed with warm filth. He didn't laugh. He didn't cry. He endured, because life was worth the mess. Let's remember the royal physician crafting pills for kings with gold and goat turds, not out of mockery, but out of reverence. Because the human body, however regal, is still a body. It eats, it digests, it expels, and it breaks. And when it breaks, we reach for what we know. Sometimes that's science, sometimes that's prayer, and sometimes it's a small brown capsule. And so we find ourselves in the 21st century doing what the ancients did with more charts. We sanitize, we label, we study. But at the core, we still ask the same question. Can I be healed? And we still find answers in strange places. So here, at the end of this journey, let us embrace the truth. That waste is not always waste. That what leaves us might yet save us. That medicine is not about what's beautiful, but what's brave. And that sometimes the bravest act of all is swallowing the unthinkable, not just in pill form, but in life. In forgiving what disgusts us, in accepting what embarrasses us, in treating every part of the human experience, even the messiest ones, with quiet awe. So tonight, as you close your eyes and drift into sleep, may your thoughts settle like old sediment. May your dreams bubble gently with absurdity. And may your gut, literal or otherwise, be calm, balanced, and blessed. Because you, dear listener, have just digested history. And somehow, it went down smooth. Sleep well. You've earned your place on the throne.